as many of you guys know, I worked for a number of years running the online video stuff for AMC theaters. I remember my time there very fondly. I've always been very proud, despite the fact that the HR department at AMC theaters is a bunch of demonic, bottom-dwelling, just incompetent morons. Anyway, besides that, I loved my time with AMC theaters as a whole, and I've always been very proud that I worked with them for a while. Anyway, I came across this article in Variety today. It's quite frankly very disappointing and a little bit disturbing. And the whole notion of the article was this, is that how America's biggest theater chains are exploiting their janitors. Now, I looked at that headline and said, well, what's this about? Here's the basic gist of it. Now, I only had a chance to come across this article about a half hour before we started the show. But here is the basic gist of it. So the major theater chains in North America, Regal, AMC, Cinemark, according to this report, a lot of us have this idea that when the movie theaters close, a bunch of the teenage kids who work there then go through and clean everything, right? Apparently that's not the case. What happens is that theaters, they don't actually employ janitors. The movie theaters hire companies, and the companies hire contractors who then hire independent contractors, usually the article points out immigrant workers, to come in and clean the movie theaters, usually from the moment they close until the moment they open up again in the morning, till the sun comes up. And it tells these horror stories about these people who are basically working for what comes down to about $5 an hour. And the story kind of leads like with this one horrible story about this woman who worked basically 9, 10, 11, 12 hours a night, basically worked for about $300 a week, doing this stuff 7 days a week. And when her son died, they refused to give her the day off. And it's that or lose your job and all this kind of stuff. Now, eventually, as you might assume, as the article goes on, there were some lawsuits filed. And this woman won $80,000 in overtime pay and back pay and all that kind of stuff. The problem is nobody paid it because technically speaking, she didn't work for Regal. Technically speaking, she didn't work for the big major movie theater chain. Technically speaking, she worked for a contractor that worked for another contractor, and there was nobody to pay the bill. And it goes on, the article goes on about this whole systemic problem that movie theaters, now granted, cleaning movie theaters is an expensive thing. Get it. So like in everything else in business, movie theaters look for a way to keep their costs as low as they can so they, don't go out of business. I understand that. But it talks about how they are implicitly involved. Even if they're not the ones who are, undermining and exploiting these people, they are exploiting a system that they know exploits people in order to keep their wages low. Now, there's a lot more horror stories in this article. If you go and read it, and I put it up, I put the link online where you can see, you can just go to Variety online and read the article. And I found it very disturbing, guys. I found it very, and I'll tell you what, because like a lot of people, like I said off the top of this, I just kind of assumed, because, in between movies, you see the teenagers go in there and they're sweeping up and picking up the buckets. But I guess, afterwards they want to spick and polish and make just everything pristine. That's great. So they send in the real cleaning crew when all things are done. But I had no idea about stuff like this. And Robert, CinemaCon is coming up. When all the big movie theater chains and the studios all get together in Vegas, you and I are going to be there. I look forward to this every year. And I really hope this article that Variety's put out causes there to be some point of discussion at CinemaCon amongst the movie theater owners to say, hey, we're creating this magical movie-going experience. We can't be exploiting people while we're doing it. At the same time, and I really hope they come to some fundamental changes. Rob, you hear about a story like this. What are your first thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'm going to use this to talk about one of my pet peeves. I can't stand people who leave their empty containers, whether it's popcorn, whether it's candy, inside the auditorium of a movie
Me either.
theater.
I hate that.
I mean, what's stopping you from picking it up and carrying it out yourself?
It's almost as if it's like this thing that just when we go see movies, like it's okay to leave garbage behind. That's one thing I've never understood. I mean, I make it a point of order to always put all my trash in my empty popcorn container and throw it away. And by the way, it's always appreciated because there's always people like at the ArcLight waiting to clean the theater. But look, I see this. This is just a systemic problem that affects all American businesses. And I think as we move further down the food chain in terms of support staff in whatever business you're working at, there's this feeling that people who are cleaning up after all of us are somehow lesser human beings than those who work in upper management. And anyone who's worked on, say, a movie set understands that your production assistants have a vital part to play as much as anybody else on the set. Everybody has a vital part to play. And yes, I'm not saying production assistants should get paid as much as everyone else, but they should get paid fairly. And everybody in our country should get paid fairly for the work they do. And too often companies are so willing to exploit those. And these are the people that need the jobs the most, that need the money the most. And like the article points out, you have immigrants who are taking these jobs. They're just starting out here in America, pursuing the American dream. And what lesson or what does that say about us as people? I mean, I think it's a larger systemic problem throughout America that the lower you go down the food chain, we do feel people, their dignity, their rights are expendable and exploitable. And it's not right. Now, I understand the bottom line's important. I understand that nobody wants to admit that, hey, we want the glass in movie theater refreshment stands cleaned. We want the glass on the Coke machines that everybody has that are self-serve to be cleaned, so there isn't as much bacteria on them. And these are people that are doing an important task, that are making our luxury experience, because after all, what is movie going if not a luxury? We live in a society where we're not going to get eaten by predators, and we know where we're going to hang our hats most of the time. So going to movies is a luxury. It's a luxury experience the entire way, up and down. So why is it that there's a certain group of people that can be exploited? So this luxury experience can happen for the rest of us. I mean, it's never right. And I'm not some bleeding heart liberal. I believe in market capitalism. But I also believe that it's up to us to make sure that the dignity of all people are preserved on every strata of our society. Yeah, especially in movie theaters.
And I don't think anybody is saying that movie theaters shouldn't conduct good business. I don't think anybody's saying that movie theaters shouldn't do what they can to keep expenses down, to make sure they can stay in business and all that kind of stuff. But there should be some bottom line, denominators to say, we don't go below this, though. And like having people that work 12 hours at a time, 7 days a week, that we do not give holidays to, that we do not give sick days to, that we do not pay overtime to, that we will not give days off to if a loved one dies, that we pay them more than $5 an hour, in which nobody can live on that. So there's got to be a middle ground here between, yes, making sure we do good business, but also making sure that we meet certain minimum requirements of how we treat people. So I don't know, Ashley, you're hearing stuff about this. Does that, like, your first reaction to that, and does that affect the way, like, the next time you walk into a movie theater and thinking, okay, what had to go into making this beautiful experience?
Yeah, well, I mean, I usually think like that anyway. I've been in the service industry for like 15 years. I'm an actor, so I'm also inherently a waiter. And not all that's, luckily I've had a little success, so I haven't had to do it as often. But yeah, I'm constantly considerate of my surroundings, and I'm just wondering, where is the empathy, people? Like, why so much greed? I just don't understand. And also, pick up your damn popcorn. Like, some of my friends even, they'll leave their cup and I'm like, go grab it. And then they're like, oh, someone comes and cleans it up. And they don't mean anything bad by it. But I'm like, they're like, well, this ticket was like, they think because like, oh, my ticket was like $17, it's just part of the package deal where you can like, kind of like, feel like you're in a restaurant and someone will bless your table. And I'm like, well, it doesn't really work like that. They're not getting tips. So just pick up your stuff. Like, I don't understand.
I completely agree.
But it's all about greed. And I just don't understand where the lack of empathy is in human beings sometimes. Like, if they just put themselves in their shoes for 1 second, that would never happen.
Again, I just really hope, Rob, that the industry will take notice of this article. I'm grateful it's in a place like Variety. I love the movie theater industry. I love the exhibitor industry. I love the experiences that these movie theaters facilitate for us. And it's just disappointing to see something like this. So I really hope at CinemaCon, as all these leaders of all the major theater chains get together and the small theater chains get together and say, hey, this is a problem and we need to do better in this. And I'd like to see some good news come out of CinemaCon where they at least address this issue on a basic level at any rate. Get the ball rolling on fixing this.